What is going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today I want to talk about SoFi, more specifically reverse split. I know this has been beaten to death completely, and even myself, I did do a video on that, but regardless of any topic of SoFi videos, I do get a sufficient amount of comments talking about a reverse split. So I'm just going to break it down. Is it good or bad? I'm going to go over everything, give you some updated data points as well while I'm doing it. But before I get into any of that, making sure you guys hit that thumbs up, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Greatly appreciate that. If you like my channel and support the growth, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. With that, let's get right to it. So live ticker is going currently down 4.24%, 18.3 million for volume, 54 is the average, and that is a 6-month average, and 2.6 million shares being purchased by institutions and hedge funds just today alone, and that is on the secondary market. So the reason why I found this video might be a little bit more beneficial for a lot of investors to realize, because we're getting to a very pivotal point, which is the $5 mark. So again, I think it's better to explain the reasonings on both different fronts. Is it good or bad? So there's been a lot of articles talking about this, but at the end of the day, it comes back down to the point. Why are they wanting a reverse split? Because in the end, I'm just going to pop over to Interactive Brokers just to kind of give you a good picture of this. Right now, there's 194.96 million shares being held by strategic entities, 311 million shares being held by institutions. So if we do break below that $5 mark, it becomes a penny stock. That's what's being coded as. And there is stipulations with a lot of institutions and the strategic entities where if they are trading SoFi on margin, they are no longer allowed to do that. So they would ultimately have to sell some of their position. And in addition to that, though, some institutions and some stipulations just outright are not allowed to own any penny stocks. Again, that is anything below the $5 mark. So this is where a lot of kind of fear is coming into play if SoFi does break below that $5 mark for 10 consecutive days. There could be a little bit more selling pressure, which again would just drive the price down. And this is some things that unfortunately a lot of people maybe they do understand or whatever it might be. Regardless of all of that, I just want to say I'm not a financial advisor, so do your own due diligence. And my thoughts on SoFi is that it is a very long-term investment. It's going to do a lot of good things. It's going to be very beneficial. Just right now in the short term, that's what people are necessarily caring about. And all of this is coming down to this. So you can see right here, July the 12th, that is the shareholder meeting date. Point number 5 or proposal number 5 is about this reverse split. So ultimately, we have to wait until July the 12th for us to kind of do that. If you haven't already, make sure you do subscribe because I'm going to be live streaming this shareholder meeting as well. So just wanted to kind of break it down so you guys know ultimately why people are talking about this or why people even care. So it comes down to the point, is this a good reason or bad reason? Because overall, the sentiment when it comes down to a reverse split is very much negative. So even if they do a reverse split, whether it be a 5-to-1 ratio or a 10-to-1 ratio or even more, ultimately it would cause a little bit more of a downtrend, because in theory reverse stock splits is only done when typically the stock is not performing well. So that shows a little bit more of an underlying negative sentiment on SoFi. So at the end of the day, if they do a reverse split, yes, it avoids a downward pressure selling from institutions, but in theory though, a lot of retailers would most likely get out in addition to a lot of institutions. It just shows SoFi in a little bit more of a negative image. So that is kind of what would happen if there is a actual reverse split. It would just most likely cause a downward trend. On the contrary though, if they do not do a reverse split, then in theory, yes, it would go down. It would have a lot of trouble most likely getting up. That's one of the things that has caused a lot of other stocks in the past, more notably this. So I've been investing since 2009, and in 2011, Bank of America went through this same thing. So especially myself, I was a fairly new investor and I had no idea what exactly was such a big deal about this. But Bank of America was really wanting to and was humoring a reverse split, similar to what actually Citibank did during that same time period. But lucky enough for Bank of America, it started to kind of reverse and bounce back since then. So they didn't really need to do anything, but definitely shows that there was a lot of people talking about this. So at the end of the day, it goes to show pretty pretty much exactly the same things and points that I talked about, that in theory though, institutions don't necessarily unload all of their shares. If they are trading on margin, they would have to sell that position, or as well some institutions and some stipulations as well, just not allowing institutions to invest in penny stocks. So there is going to be a significant, notable at least, downward pressure that would happen on SoFi. At the end of the day though, most likely there would be a lot of insiders buying the dip, most likely as well a lot of retail investors that have a lot of long-term mentalities. But in the end though, what is worse? I know technically we're facing two bad scenarios. So either institutions are selling or we do a reverse split, and then in theory we would go down from there. So we have two negative things. This is why a lot of people are kind of a little bit more mixed on the topic. What would be worse? What would cause a little bit more of a negative return on investment? In my opinion, and how I've seen this happen in the past, is typically if they do a reverse split, yes, it might go down 10% give or take from there. But if they actually maintain that and have the institutions sell out, obviously given that they can't use margin and things like that, I personally feel not doing a reverse split would be a little bit more damaging on the stock. But keep in mind, all of this is just short-term noise. Long-term, it won't really make that big of a difference. But short-term, I think having institutions backing SoFi is a little bit more significant versus it having a reverse split and retailers just being unhappy about that. So that's where my 2 cents comes into that play. I do see a lot of comments, oddly enough, about options activity, that they want to do a reverse split and they're hoping for a reverse split so that they could benefit a little bit more on selling covered calls and things like that. In reality, though, that doesn't really make too much sense, at least in my mentality. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. Ultimately, though, let me know your thoughts on the reverse split. What do you think is the worser of the two evils? Do you think doing the reverse split and technically having a little bit more retailers unhappy with the performance of SoFi and it going down because and as a result of the reverse split, do you think that is worse, or technically having institutions selling? But again, it's one of those things that, going back to Interactive Brokers, as of right now, we wouldn't really necessarily know how many actual institutional shares would be sold. So I think that's one of the underlying factors that we don't know until it actually happens. And we are getting very close to that $5 mark in general, which it might come possibly even before the actual shareholder meeting. So we might not necessarily have any substantial play in this. It might break below that for 10 consecutive days, and then in theory, a lot of institutions would just be selling that. So it might all come before the shareholder meeting. You never know, right? But in the end, though, there's a lot of big money that is owning SoFi, and in my opinion, how I've seen a lot of other stocks, is better to have them on your side than have them forcibly sell some positions. So it's one of those things. Of course, though, if SoFi was not to do a reverse split, they would just easily buy back in once it does get over that $5 mark. It's one of those kind of little weird stipulations that they would have to do. But at the end, SoFi is a long-term investment. I always say this, and it's a very disruptive company, just unfortunately getting beaten down with the broader market. And in the end, though, today was PCE info data that came out, and the Feds typically use that over CPI, so this is why there's a lot of importance placed on this today and caused a little bit more of a tentative sell-off. Things have bounced back since then, but it's starting to come back down a little bit. And more so as well, I just want to give you a quick update because shorts have been playing a very big part in SoFi's downfall right now. Because keep in mind, these people want SoFi down below the $5 mark. They're going to benefit significantly. So right now they are increasing 0.67%, 2.79 million shares being additionally borrowed, and the cost to borrow is kind of maintaining itself. So it's been roughly around this range, 3.5% around there. So overall, though, they are increasing slowly, but it's one of those things that having 136 million shares being shorted against your underlying asset is never a good thing. But overall, let me know your thoughts on SoFi in the comments below. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Greatly appreciate that. If you do like my channel and support the growth, take a look at my memberships, link in the description below, or just hit the join button at the bottom of the screen. With that said, I appreciate you guys watching, and let's all make a lot of money on SoFi.